And good afternoon, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. I am your host, Tony Defeo. I hope you're having a wonderful and fantastic Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you ate a lot of good food on Thursday, and I hope you have a lot of leftovers right now that you're enjoying this weekend. And before I begin today's show, I just want to encourage you, as always, to check out the Behind Steel Curtain YouTube channel, where we bring you the Steelers Hangover, this show, the Know Your Enemy show with Jeffrey Benedict and Michael Beck, the Steelers Preview with Dave Schofield, Brian Anthony Davis, and Jeff Hartman, the Scobro show with Dave Schofield and his brother Rich, and a few others that I'm probably forgetting. And then we have audio exclusives that you can check out on any audio platform, such as the Live Mic with Michael Beck, the Let's Ride show. It's a really good show with Jeff Hartman. The Retro show with yours truly and Brian Anthony Davis. The Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. And of course, you can check out all of our YouTube podcasts also on the audio platform. Any podcasts that we have, whether it's on YouTube or exclusively on audio, you can check them all out on audio. And also, please check out Behind Steel Curtain, the website, where we bring you breaking news, commentary, film breakdown. Anytime a player contracts COVID-19, which seems to be happening a lot lately, we're one of the first people to tell you about it. So please check it out. It's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And hello to everybody in the live chat. There's Boing Boom, Brad Jewett, Steelers Pittsburgh, Gyro, David Moya, Vic Venom. Wow, what a name that is. Mike O'Malley, who was the first one here. He said he was the first one here. So he gets those bonus points for today. See who else we have here before Sean Manahan, Ezra. All the fine folks are here to join me today, and I welcome you to today's show. And as you know, this week's game against the Ravens, I was supposed to be talking about two games on today's show. Last Sunday's game against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville, and of course the Thanksgiving night game against the Ravens at Heinz Field. But I only have one game to talk about, and that's the Jaguars game, because the Ravens game, initially it was postponed until Sunday at 1:15 because of a pretty big outbreak of COVID-19 within the Ravens organization. But players kept testing positive, and it was moved to, including Lamar Jackson. He was, I guess, the big domino to fall there. It was revealed on Thursday night that he tested positive for the virus. So the game, as of now, will be played at 8 o'clock on Tuesday. So I'll be talking more about that in a bit. But first, I want to get into last Sunday's game against the Jaguars. And also welcome to Marcus Nash, William Coonrad, and Danny Owens Jr. So welcome to all, Devin Snowden. So welcome to everybody. And the Jaguars game, as just like the week before against the Bengals, it was pretty methodical. Wasn't necessarily pretty, and it wasn't a work of art, but it wasn't ugly either. It was what you've come to expect with the Steelers this year. It was again pretty methodical on offense. I mean, they put up 27 points. They have yet to score less than 24 this year. Ben Roethlisberger threw 2 more touchdowns. The defense was superb. They gave up 10 points against the Bengals and only 3 against the Jaguars, while facing Jake Luton, James Robinson, the fine rookie running back. They held him in check pretty much. So it was a fine effort. Terrell Edmonds, what can you say about him? Terrell Splash Play Edmonds. I made that joke during the game on Twitter, and Behind the Steel Curtain retweeted it, and it was like one of the best tweets I've ever had. So thanks to them, and thanks to Terrell Edmonds for really being a big play player, not just in the game, but for me. I never get a lot of traction on my tweets. So, but in all seriousness, it was nice to see him step up and make a couple of plays. I think he gets he was criticized for over his first couple seasons. A lot of people who, depending on how you talk to, he was either just not an exciting enough player to a downright bust, even though he started for 2 straight years in 2018 and 2019. Of course, he's started again this year, and now you're starting to see more and more great stories about him. You're starting to hear more and more positive comments about him and opinions about him. And I think, again, we have to remember when it comes to Edmonds, he was a bit of a project. I think it's safe to say he was kind of a reach. He was certainly a surprise pick at the end of the first round in 2018. But they brought him in with a specific for a specific skill set. They thought he could play dime linebacker, nickel, that kind of thing, and also safety. And he's found a home at strong safety. And of course, Minka Fitzpatrick coming in as a free safety, an all pro like that certainly helps. But you have to give credit to Edmonds for his improvement, his continued progress. I mean, I think we all know Jeffrey Benedict and a couple other people on the site and lots of people have pointed out how good and how valuable he's been with regards to covering the tight end, which is something the Steelers have had trouble with in recent years, basically since Rob Gronkowski's rookie year. So, from that standpoint alone, he's a valuable commodity, and now he's turning into an all-around great, strong safety. So kudos to him, and kudos to the Steelers for starting out for winning their 10th straight game to start the year. It's their again they've broken the record for the best start of their hit franchise history for a third week in a row. Now they're 10-0, and they have a pretty big lead in the AFC North. The Ravens, they lost to the Titans in overtime last week, so they have a 4-game lead over them. And people obviously assume that, or they look at them as the Steelers' biggest threat because they're a pretty formidable foe, and they won the division the last 2 years. But you can't forget about the Browns. I keep forgetting about them, but you can't forget about them. They keep on winning. They're 7-3, and it's still a pretty big lead, a 3-game lead with 6 to go. But you never know. I mean, they gave away a 2.5-game lead with about 5 or 6 games left 2 years ago. So I guess you can't count your chickens before, or your eggs before, whatever that saying is. You can't look ahead. That's what I'm really trying to say. And they still have one more game against them in week 17. Hopefully, it's not a real meaningful game for the Steelers, and it means everything for the Browns. But still. Again, back to last Sunday's game, you had to like what you saw from even the running game. That was the running game's performance over the previous few weeks was a bone of contention with a lot of people, and I guess rightfully so. I mean, you want to, even though they have Ben Roethlisberger, and even though he's doing his thing perhaps better than ever, and he's certainly in my mind an MVP candidate and a candidate for comeback player of the year. You want to have your offense firing on all cylinders if you can. And, it wasn't a dominant performance by the running game last week, but it was certainly an improvement. They rushed for 106 as a team, predominantly. Most of those yards coming from James Conner, who rushed for 89. So it wasn't a dominant performance, but I think it was about as effective as you want it to be. Because I don't think you need it to be, or I'm sorry, not as much as you want it to be. It was about as effective as they needed it to be. I think if you can, they came into that game averaging 101.8 yards overall, which, it's a bit misleading because they were averaging about 45 yards a game the previous 3 weeks. But still, if you can average 100 yards or so on the ground the rest of the year, I think, that you're doing just enough to keep the defense honest and open things up a bit more for the passing game. But I mean, the passing game worked as well as it has since week 1. I think we I've written about this and I've said this before on other shows. I think if there's one team that is played within itself week in and week out since week 1, it's the Steelers. And I think you're seeing a better version of that now because obviously they're 10 weeks into the season and there was no preseason, so they didn't really get a chance to work the kinks out that way. There were no OTAs or anything like that. There was a training camp at Heinz Field, so that was a bit different. So it was going to take time to work some of the bugs out on both offense and defense. But still, I think they've been a pretty consistent unit on both sides of the ball since week one. Obviously, it's an easy thing for me to say since they're 10-0. So, I think there's a lot to be encouraged about with this team over the final 6 weeks. I mean, they're not out of the woods yet in terms of that number one seed. I think that has yet to be determined. I know a lot of people are feeling like the NFL is kind of screwing the Steelers in a lot of ways, like with the Ravens thing and the Titans fiasco earlier in the year. And even with the contingency plan, the as yet to be implemented plan that would add an 8th team to each conference in case I think that would only take effect if the NFL couldn't finish all 17 weeks in its entirety. So I think a lot of people feel like the NFL is out to get the Steelers, which I don't get that at all, because they're one of the most popular teams in sports, and they're certainly a cash cow in terms of ratings, and everywhere they go, people go to see them. So I don't think the NFL is out to get them. I just think it's one of those things. And as far as the bye is concerned, it's not it's not really the Steelers' bye yet. They're only up by one game, with 6 to go. And the Chiefs are the team behind them. And all it's going to take is one loss by the Steelers. If it's an AFC loss, then they're tied suddenly. And then it goes down the common opponent. I like to point out, or I like to thank the person that explained that in great detail on one of the articles I wrote in the comment section last week. It goes from common opponent, then I think strength of victory, then strength of schedule. And I don't know if any of those would work out well for the Steelers, So for everybody to say, oh, the NFL is just trying to screw the Steelers out of a bye, no, they're not. And it's not the Steelers' bye yet. If we had 1 week to go and they had a 2 or 3 game lead and they had the bye wrapped up and the NFL did this, and maybe I would say, okay, you have a big old axe to grind, but we're not there yet. So let's see it play out first, and let's see if the NFL even does this with this possible 8th seed in each conference. I don't want them to do it. I want that number one seed and bye out there for as a nice carrot for the Steelers to continue to go after, because I think it'll keep them sharp. But if it happens, it happens. These are to keep repeating what everybody has been saying for 8-9 months now, whatever it's been. We're in unprecedented times. It's unusual. This is a year that we're probably never going to see again. So, the NFL is going to do whatever it could do to get through a season and to get through this, COVID-19 year that, other leagues have not been as fortunate as the NFL through, 10 weeks anyway. I mean, there's still a ways to go, but as I've said before, the NHL was compromised heavily. The NBA was compromised heavily. They both had to delay their seasons or postpone their seasons for 2 or 3 months and then jump right into the playoffs. That couldn't have been easy for them. And of course, baseball, the Dodgers only, they won their first World Series in 37 years or 39 years or 32 years. I'm sorry, 32 years. But there's probably going to be an asterisk around that next to that title forever, because it was only a 60-game season. All things were equal, but my point is the NFL has conducted its business as close to normal, or more than any league out there, including collegiate sports. I mean, the NFL has been pretty good about this. I mean, people act like it's been an epic disaster with the NFL, but it's I think they've handled it up to this point as well as they possibly can. But I want to welcome some more people into the live chat. There's Felicia Ballard. She's one of our famous people. There's Snowman. Speaking of famous people, Snowman legends, Tom Vallejo. So welcome all the new folks. But as far as I just wanted to take a little break there and go on to the next topic. I was rambling there for a second, but the next thing I want to talk about is the fiasco, or not fiasco. I don't want to call it a fiasco. The unfortunate turn of events that led to Thursday's game getting moved to this coming Tuesday, and with all the Ravens players and some staff members, including a strength coach who was suspended, I guess, for negligence or for breaching the protocol, either in the facility or on his own. I don't know what he did, but he certainly was guilty of it he was certainly guilty of something because of the team suspended him. So, and a lot of people were asking, why couldn't the NFL play on Thursday? They cited other games like the Patriots. Cam Newton had it early in the year, and they played I think on a Monday night or Tuesday night. The Titans, after they had so many positive cases. Not only did they have to have their bye early, not only was their game with the Steelers canceled or postponed, but their following game they had to play on Tuesday because they just kept having people in their organization test positive. But they managed to play that. They managed to play on that Tuesday, and of course the 49ers had a lot of players that were missing or that were in the protocol, and they played and they got their game in. So people were wondering why. Well, why they couldn't do the same thing with this game. Well, I mean, first of all, they are as of right now, the game is still on. It's just so that they had to move it a few days from the original kickoff time. And a lot of people think that's unfair, but to me, in my opinion, you do whatever you can to get the game in. And if that means postponing it a few days, so be it. I think that's what you have to do if you're the NFL. I think people have to stop treating this thing like there's a one-size-fits-all policy for everything that comes up, because it's not like a concussion. It's not like a positive drug test or anything like that. I mean, this is a virus, so it's unpredictable. And even if these teams follow the protocol to the T, there's no guarantee that somebody isn't going to test positive. I mentioned Bob Walk, the Pirates broadcaster, a while back, and how he said he and his wife did everything perfectly, everything that they were supposed to do. They went above and beyond, with the safety measures, and they still both contracted the virus. So, I realized there was some negligence involved with the Ravens organization, but I mean, you can't throw stones, I don't think, because look what happened with Vance McDonald a few weeks ago. He tested, he displayed symptoms. He tested negative, but and he flew to Dallas and played in that game, despite testing, despite showing symptoms. Now, according to Mike Tomlin, and he was right, the Steelers followed the protocol to the T. They followed the guidelines, which is why they let McDonald fly to Dallas and play in that game. But if I'm Tomlin, if I'm the Steelers, I'm saying, look, we're just gonna proceed with extra caution, and we're just gonna have you stay home for this week, because look at all the players that had to go on the into the protocol after that. Vince Williams, a couple other guys had to go into the COVID protocol the following week, and I mean, who knows? That very easily could have led to a massive outbreak between the Steelers, the Cowboys, and then who knows what happened. So when it comes to this, and I said this before, you can't be too belligerent against other teams, because all it takes is one person in your organization, or one tiny mistake, or one lapse in judgment, and all of a sudden you're the team that everybody hates. You're the organization everybody wants to forfeit, or to lose draft picks, or to be fined heavily. So I just think you have to keep thinking of this as a fluid situation. If you're a fan, if you're a team, if you're the NFL, it has to, you have to keep as Mike Tomlin has been quoted as saying many times, you got to be light on your toes from week to week. And if you really look at the Steelers Ravens situation, the Steelers had extra time to prepare for them, as it turned out. Instead of a short week, they had now they're going to have extra days to prepare for them, and unfortunately, they're going to have less time to prepare for Washington the following Sunday. And a lot of people think, well, that's unfair, but if you think about it, it kind of evens out a little bit, not totally, because the Steelers, I mean, they don't always play Washington. They only play them every 4 years, whereas they play the Ravens twice a year, so they're really familiar with them. So maybe they don't need the prep time from them that they would need for an NFC opponent. So people think that's unfair, but I mean, come on, it's Washington. I realize they look fantastic against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, but they went into that game 3-7. They're now 4-7, and let's be honest, the Cowboys aren't the greatest team ever this year. So a lot of teams, except for the Steelers, as it turns out, look good against the Cowboys. So I think the Steelers should be able to handle their business in that game, even on a short week. So, when you have so many players, like when you have players that continue to test positive, like the Ravens had up until Thursday, Friday. I mean, I think the NFL is doing the right thing by postponing the game an extra couple of days, because what if people want this game to go on? Well, what happens if they would have played that game on Thursday or Sunday and there was a major outbreak on both teams then, and then the Steelers were compromised, and they had to they had to cancel a game, or they had to postpone a game, or So I think you have to proceed with caution, and you have to, if there's a way to be as safe as possible and still get the game in. If you're the NFL, you have to do that, and I think postponing the game till Tuesday is the best way to go. And as far as a forfeit, people keep calling for forfeits. And I've said this before, you have to protect the integrity of the league, and you can't open that can of worms, because who knows, when another, cheating scandal is going to take place, or steroid scandal is going to take. And then what are people going to call for forfeits in that case too? And I don't know if you saw this the other day, but Adam Schefter tweeted out that if there's a forfeit, then both teams, or neither team gets paid, and the networks lose money. So if you're a fan, maybe you care about players getting paid, maybe you don't. But even if you don't care, that's another example of why they're never going to have a forfeit. And it would be unfair to the Chiefs. It would be unfair to for a lot of reasons. I mean, would the Steelers still get the number one seed? Would that be fair if they went 16-0 and got the number one seed because one of their victories was a forfeit? So I think you have to, if you can get the game in, even if you have to add a week 18, which I don't want to see, I think you have to try to get all your games in. Here's a $5 super chat from Snowman. The Ratbirds guy had COVID and didn't tell anybody, so that's different. Yeah, I mean, but he didn't tell anybody, and that's a horrible. And thank you for the $5, Snowman. And he, for that reason alone, he deserves to be suspended. And maybe the Ravens should lose some draft picks, and they should be fined. They probably will. But I mean, I don't think you can forfeit the game. I just think that hurts the credibility of the league. And that will bring to a close the first half of this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. If you're on YouTube, stick around. I'm not going anywhere. If you're listening on the audio platform, please download part 2 of this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. I am your host, Tony Defeo. Thank you to everybody in the live chat for sticking with me and for joining me. And here's a big quote from a all caps quote from Ezra. If I can find it, if I can do this right for once. And he says, no forfeit. And I agree, no forfeit. I don't want to see a forfeit. I don't think that's a precedent you want to set. And here's a differing view, or maybe it's not a differing view, but here's a view from Yul Skinner, who always has some hard opinions. Suit up and play the game from your entire roster. These delays are a huge joke, in my opinion. Well, I would agree. Like if 6 Ravens players tested positive on Monday, and they were out for the game, then yeah, you play. But the problem is, and just like the problem with the Titans, is they kept having positive tests throughout the week. So you can test all the way up until game time, or I'm sure the day before the game, I should say. and what if there's false negatives, right? And then you play the game. It's like with Vance McDonald. He tested negative right before the game, or a day before the Dallas game, and then he tested positive after. So, if it's a whole slew of players early in the week, and you contain it, and you have no other positive tests show up, then yeah, sorry, too bad, Ravens. And by the way, Lamar Jackson is not going to play on Tuesday. He's out. I mean, a lot of people were saying that it was a conspiracy by the Ravens to sort of drag it out to assure that Jackson plays. But once you test positive, you have to miss, I think, 10 days or 14 days, whatever it is. I think it's 10 days. Either way, it's gonna cover this game for sure. So, he's out, and I don't know if did J.K. Dobbins test positive, or is he just a contact tracing casualty? I'm not sure, but I know for sure that RG3, provided he doesn't test positive, RG3 is going to be the starting quarterback for the Ravens. So, the Ravens aren't going to gain any kind of advantage from this unless the game gets wiped out totally and they have to go to an 18th week. So, one more thing I wanted to talk about before I take some questions, and that is the logistics of the playoffs with this whole COVID thing. And I kind of joke tweeted on Friday morning that if like, for example, if the Steelers were playing the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, which I would sign up for it. I'd sign up for any matchup if it involves the Steelers. And Russell Wilson tested positive like 2 days before the game. People would want to forfeit. That would be trending. Forfeit would be trending. The hashtag forfeit. But that would never happen. There's no way. They could delay that Super Bowl for infinity if they wanted to, or at least until March. So they're going to get that game in. And if you think that the NFL is going to play any Super Bowl with star players missing because of COVID, when they have a pretty big window to get the game in, and there's no real, you don't have to worry about fans, I guess. I guess there'd be a few thousand fans at Raymond James Stadium for that game, but I guess if you moved it back a week or a few days, you could still accommodate maybe give them a hotel, some hotel accommodations. But other than that, they can kind of move the game back as much as they want it. And that got me to thinking about the playoffs. Like what, people, are talking, they're going on about the regular season, but what happens in the postseason? Like what happens if there's an outbreak and involving one team on the eve of a wild card playoff game? And do they move it to a Monday or a Tuesday? And if they do that, how compromised is the winner of that game if they have to play on a short week? And that might be okay for the regular season. I think the regular season, you do whatever you can to get through this. But once the postseason is here, I remember after that Browns game, that famous comeback against the Browns in a wild card game back in 2002, Cowher was just beside himself with anger because that game was on a Sunday, and the divisional round game they scheduled it against the Titans. They scheduled it for a Saturday, so he was beside himself. He was upset. How could you do this? So could you imagine what a coach would say if a postseason game was played on a Tuesday and they had to turn around and play? I don't think they would make a play on a Saturday, but if they made them play on a Sunday, And what if that game can't go at all? Like what if they just keep having positive tests and they can't play that game at all? Do they wipe out the whole round and push everything back for a week? They would almost have to, because you would have to keep everybody on an even schedule, right? Or an equal schedule. You would have to keep everybody on the same, like in the wild card round, they would have to have the same schedule, right? You couldn't have three, or I guess it'd be four this year, 4 wild card games, or however many would there be? There's 3, whatever many. Like you couldn't have like all but one of the wild card games take place one week. They would all have to be played on the same week, and like what if the AFC Championship game had to be postponed because of a COVID outbreak? You would almost have to postpone the NFC Championship game too, because the winners of each of those games would have to have an equal amount of time to prepare for the Super Bowl. So I think it's a pretty interesting, fascinating topic, because it's something that I really haven't heard anybody talk about so far during the regular season. It's just all been about, moving games within the season, which logistically is a lot easier to do. You can even add an 18th week, but when it comes to the playoffs, I mean, geez, everybody's worried about the Steelers losing their bye, but they might have 2 byes in the postseason. They might have 3 byes. You just never know how this is all going to play out. So I just think it's a pretty fascinating topic. So those are my topics for today, and I will take some questions now. And there's my man, Team Money, Terry, my good friend Terry. There's Donald Nolan. He brings up a good point about RG3. I'll get his comment up there. RG3 stats versus Steelers last year: 11 for 21, 96 yards, 1 INT. He's a backup for a reason. Yeah, he's a backup for a reason. And Lamar Jackson is a former MVP for a reason. And people think, oh, well, they're similar. Well, not really. It's like saying Devin Bush and Ulysses Gilbert are similar athletes. They're really not. So it's a good point. I think the Steelers have a huge advantage there, facing RG3. Here's one from Informed 80, a comment. If you think a nylon thin mask will save you from an actual deadly virus, think again, buddy. You're smarter than that, dude. This COVID nonsense doesn't make sense, and the world knows it. Well, I think that's a big old conspiracy thing, Informed 80. I don't know why you would throw that out there, but I don't agree with that at all. I think you have to try to be as safe as possible in all this. And here's one from Ron Chess. Felicia, the game RG3 beat us was without Ben. Steelers just playing outstring. Des Bryant, not as good now as any of our 5 receivers. Hollywood Brown, nothing special. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, we have to remember that. I think the Steelers, I don't want to say they were defeated in that game emotionally or mentally, but I think they knew that their chances of making the playoffs were pretty slim, and the Ravens had nothing to lose. They had everything wrapped up as far as the number 1 seed. And, when you're playing nice and loose like that, I think it gives you somewhat of an advantage, especially if you're at home, which they were. They were in Baltimore. They were in Pittsburgh. And halfway through the game, it was pretty apparent that Pittsburgh wasn't gonna make the playoffs, because the Titans were taking care of business against the Texans. So I think this game will be a lot different. First of all, I think the Steelers are going to be motivated to lay the smackdown on Baltimore because of everything that's gone on with COVID, with all the delays and their days off being all shuffled around. So I think they're going to be motivated, and motivated or not, they should win this game. If you're facing the other team's backup quarterback and you're one heck of a defense and you're 10-0 as a team, then you should take care of that team pretty handily. I mean, stranger things have happened, and we saw what happened a few weeks ago in Dallas with Garrett Gilbert as their 4th string quarterback, or 5th string, whatever he was at that point. So you never know. And this is a pretty heated rivalry, and the Ravens are a proud organization. So I don't expect them to lay down and play dead on Tuesday, provided the game is played. But I do expect the Steelers to win the game pretty handily at the end. I didn't before all this stuff started happening. I don't know if I should actually go in and change it. I don't know if it's still early enough. I should change my my weekly prediction on Behind the Steel Curtain. I had the Ravens winning in overtime, 23-20. I know, boo me. But that was before all this stuff started happening with the COVID, or at least what I think Dobbins and Mark Ingram were already ruled out for that game, but certainly not Lamar Jackson. So I think that was my only motivation was for that. But without Lamar Jackson, I don't see the Steelers losing this game. So let's see what else we have here in terms of some questions. Let's see. Here's one from Mike O'Malley. Another by the time we play the Ratbirds, they will have their starters and we won't. That's not true. Unless they unless they bump it back to week 18, I know for a fact that Lamar Jackson is not going to be able to play in this game, unless I'm sadly mistaken. Here's a question from Ron Chess. Tony, do you think Steelers come out 5 wide and build fast lead? I think they just stick to what they've been doing all year. I think, the short passing game, I don't think there's any need to try to establish the running game. You just want it to be effective, but I think you come out and you try to you stay within yourself like you've been doing all year. Ben has a plethora of targets. Obviously, he's 4 deep at receiver. He's 2 deep at tight end. I think you just dance with what's been bringing you so far, or what's bringing you so far. Let's see what else we have here. Yep, here's one from Mule Skinner, a comment. The Steelers will be incensed. I think they will. I think they're going to be pretty motivated. If you go back to that Titans game, Ben seemed pretty motivated, especially early on. I mean, he got into it with the guy that there was a Titans defender that was called for roughing the passer. He got into it with him. You hardly ever see Ben jawing with another player. So I think he was pretty motivated, and I think they're going to be pretty motivated to pluck the Ravens this Tuesday night. Here's one from Donald Nolan. The question: Who has bigger game this week? Juju, Deontay, Claypool, or James Washington? I don't know. I don't know. I think it's anyone's guess. I think anyone, and we've talked about this before. That's what's so great about this receiving core. Any one of them could have a great game. They're just so deep, and Ben is just he's playing the offense, at least the passing game, like a violin right now. I mean, he's just or he's playing the opposing defenses like a violin. He's just they're in a really great situation. I mean, James Washington. I mean, he's basically he gets 1 or 2 opportunities a game now, and I think he's a talented receiver. So maybe it's his turn to have a big game. I mean, maybe it's his turn to break out and go nuts. I mean, that's something you see often in these kind of rivalry games is unknown heroes emerging. Look at a few years ago when Ryan Mallett almost cost the Steelers a playoff berth. They signed him off the street, and he beat the Steelers in the next to last game. So you just never know. But any one of those guys could emerge as the hero. And I missed a super chat, and I'm sorry. Here's one. I'll try to get it up here. I found it. I have the question in front of me. I just want to make sure everybody else can see it. If not, I'll just read it. That's pretty far gone. I must have missed it earlier. But anyway, here's one from a $4.99 super chat from Maxwell Holcomb, and I thank you for that donation. Just hoping we can get this game in and stay healthy and control the spread of CV-19. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the key. You have to, and Informed 80. I'll go back to him. He thinks this is a big old nothing burger, and it really doesn't matter what you think or I think. It's like I always argue with people about drug suspensions for marijuana. People, it's no big deal. It's a recreational drug. People do it all the time. It doesn't matter. I mean, this is back then when guys like Le'Veon Bell were being suspended for testing positive for missing drug tests. It doesn't matter what you think or what I think, or if you think this is all a bunch of BS. The NFL is gonna react this way to positive tests. So, that's just how it is. There's a protocol in place for a reason, and they're trying to do whatever they can to get these games in. And if they have to delay it a few games or a few days, then that's what they're going to have to do. It really, you can sit there and spout all the stuff you want and call me a sheep if you want, Informed 80, which I didn't put that up there, but that's what he called me. It doesn't really matter. It's what the NFL thinks. And the NFL thinks that they have to try to contain this thing as much as possible. And if 1 or 2 players or staff members test positive, well, they're gonna do whatever they can to keep their players safe and to keep their staff members safe and their coaches safe, and make sure that this doesn't turn into a big major outbreak. That's just what's going to happen. Here's one from Yul Skinner, and I'm telling you what. I mean, I had my doubts early on. Robert Spillane. Spillane is due again for another crunching play. I figured, when they went out and traded for Avery Williamson, I thought, okay, it's just a matter of time. But evidently, they're believing in Robert Spillane, and he has, they're not going to keep him in there just because he's a great underdog story. They're gonna do what they can, what's best for the defense and what's best for their team. So if they thought Avery Williamson was the better option right now, I think he'd be in there by now. But he's hardly getting any playing time. He's coming in garbage time, essentially. I mean, fortunately for him, the last two games have been decided by the fourth quarter, and he's gotten some playing time. But I mean, they have not been able to get Spillane out of the lineup. So that's a testament to him and how he's taken advantage of this opportunity and how he has stepped up. Mike Tomlin, we talk about the standard is the standard. That's one of his slogans, next man up. And, he's gotten his guys to believe in it. He's gotten his guys to buy in, on the outside looking in, it doesn't always seem realistic, and often it isn't. We saw that last year with the quarterback play. But, the great thing about Tomlin is his messaging has not gotten stale. It's what are we, 13, 14 years into his career, and they still play hard for him. They still believe in what he has to say. So he's getting the job done. And I think Robert Spillane, obviously he gets the lion's share of the credit for, he's the one taking advantage of the opportunity, but kudos to Tomlin for believing in him and for his coaches, Keith Butler and his position coaches for sticking with him and believing in him and developing him. And he has not been a liability in that defense. I mean, if he was, I think we'd know by now. What else we have here? I think I saw some breaking news. Mike O'Malley, Tony, don't let it get under your skin. Everyone has an opinion, just like COVID affects everyone differently. 98% survive, though. That's a fact. Yeah, I know. That's a survival rate, but that doesn't matter. And he's not that he was getting under my skin. I'm just trying to prove a point that you can call me a sheep. You can call the NFL sheep, but the NFL is going to react a certain way to positive tests. That's the way it is. So, I mean, you can sit there and talk about survival rates and everything, but they're still going to react a certain way. So that's why you have to keep following the protocol and the guidelines, and the players have to wear masks on the sideline. The coaches have to wear masks at all times. They just have to keep following these protocols, because if they don't, if there's a positive test, if there's an outbreak, it could affect the playoffs. Look what it's doing this week with these teams. So, it's not about opinions. It's about what happened. It's about facts and what happens when these players test positive. The NFL reacts a certain way, and it's going to continue to react a certain way. It's not suddenly going to go, we don't care about these positive tests anymore. We're going to forge ahead. No, they're going to postpone games. They're going to possibly eliminate weeks at the end of the season, add weeks at the end of the season, eliminate buys, possibly postpone playoff games, like I mentioned earlier. It's all going to be all over the place. So, it's not about opinions. It's about facts. And this is how the NFL is going to react. They've set a precedent. This is what we do under these circumstances. We react seriously to these positive tests. Let's see here. Here's one from Tom. Schefter said, even if more Steelers test positive, the game will be played, and the NFL has told Pitt to use practice squad players if they have to. But yeah, because Stephon Tuitt and Gerald Hawkins, and I think Isaiah Buggs, they're all in the COVID protocol right now. So yeah, I mean, again, it's not just the Ravens. It's happening to a lot of teams. So on that note, I will bid you adieu. It was a pretty spirited show. I had a lot of fun. I love interacting, even if we disagree. No hard feelings. This is it's all sports. At the end of the day, we're all sports fans and all Steelers fans. So just want to thank you all for sticking with me, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And just a reminder, I was informed on last night by Brian Anthony Davis that the hangover will be on Wednesday, which I guess makes sense because we always try to have it after the game. So that that won't be on Monday, but check that out on Wednesday. I don't know what the schedule is going to be like as far as podcasts on Monday and Tuesday, but certainly the hangover will be on Wednesday. So I'll talk to you all then. So enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving weekend. If you're hunting, have fun hunting. If you're shopping, have fun shopping. If you love leftovers, have fun pigging out. That's what I'm going to be doing the rest of the weekend. And go Steelers.